Good morning, everyone. Hope you all know that APSSDC is conducting multiple technical and non-technical sessions to improve the skills of faculty, students, and unemployed youth all over AP. So, as a part of that, we have started the webinar series on latest trends. And today, our session is on engineering services, a whole new dimension post COVID. And our speaker is Mr. Arun Rai Garu. He's a sales leader in Kaling Business Consulting Private Limited. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the session. Thank you for accepting these sessions and conducting these sessions with APSSDC.
Thank you, Manasa. So let's. Okay, so before I start, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. So I am a graduate in civil engineering from VTU in Bangalore, and thereafter I worked with BL Kashyap and Son. It's a construction company, and after that worked there for 2 years, and then moved to Scotland to pursue my master's in business administration. And thereafter, once I moved back to India, I joined Flatful Solutions, where I worked as business development manager for engineering services, and particularly for civil engineering and architectural services with them. So my major experience of working for engineering services, and that comes from there and from my degree background, and for the brief period of time that I worked with construction company as well. Currently, I'm working as a sales executive with Keylink, and so today's session that we are going to talk about is going to be on engineering services. Now, we all might have a little bit of brief idea about what engineering services mean or pertain to the term itself. But however, we are going to look at it not just from only the point of view of engineering services, but we are also going to look at it from the point of view, what does it mean post-COVID? Because our world has drastically changed. So we need to look at it, how it's going to affect us and how it's going to affect the future of engineering services in India as well. Post that, we will have we're going to talk about the outsourcing, what is the major business model in engineering services that is being outsourced to India. So we're going to talk from that perspective. And then we will have question and answer session at the end of it. So you guys can shoot your questions and we'll try and take as many questions as possible. So to begin with, I would like to walk you through with the story of engineering services in India as such, from the outsourcing point of view, so far what it has been. So engineering services from the time immemorial, it is one of those things which has shaped the human life, and it has shaped how humans perceive the future and their surroundings to be. So it not only shapes our society, it is one of the major reasons why we have these major inventions, whether it was from the wheel to today's green buildings or today's, all electronic items, or even post-COVID, the vaccinations or anything that you talk about comes from that engineering ingenuity of human beings. So innovation, invention, and improved quality of life. These are few of the things which engineering services has done indirectly or directly for humans on this earth. Now, it influences our way of life, it influences our agriculture capabilities. So whether it is today about some grains that needs to be produced at a certain quantity or quality level, again, engineering and biomedical sciences would come into the picture, and we would work on that to take it forward from there. Now, transportation, as we all know, as I mentioned, right from the point where the wheel was invented to the point where we have, smart cars, we have cars running on electricity, so biofuels. So transportation has been greatly influenced, and it has improved our life drastically. Now, social behavior, the example of that would be right now what we're doing. I mean, like, if this was not a COVID situation, this session would have been in person. This would have taken place in a physical place and we would be interacting physically. However, it has changed our social behavior and we are not doing that anymore, at least till the time COVID goes away. So that is how the social behavior has changed. And also, if you look at the other aspects of it, like mobiles have become a great part of our day-to-day life. Apart from that, you see your games, you see your TV, you see your smart televisions coming into the picture. So it affects a great deal in your life. And we might not realize it, but from time to time, engineering services or engineering or ingenuity of human beings have played into it. Education obviously comes from there, so it has affected that as well. Also, the way education is delivered, or the way education is being perceived by the people, those who are the consumers of it, that gets really a great deal affected by it. Healthcare, yes, why not? Because healthcare is not only just medical services or studying, medicine at university or at postgraduate level. Medicine or healthcare industry gets affected by engineering as well because of the equipments that you use, because of the technologies, whether it is to do with computer-related technologies or mechanical-related technologies, or whether it is to make, green buildings in order to decrease your CO2 footprint. So healthcare also gets affected by it. Eating habits. Now, when I say eating habits, science or engineering has changed that as well. Now, most of us are used to ordering either through Swiggy or any other platform that would provide us to, with the capability of not leaving our house and still getting the food or the grocery delivered to our doorstep. So these are a few things which engineering services has shaped, and all of this altogether shapes the future that we live in. Now, apart from these obvious reasons, there are other things that we don't see, but they make a great deal of effect on our day-to-day life and also on the lives of people, those who work directly for these services. So whether it is to do with the safety standards at the construction company or in a factory or in any workplace, because safety has become a big thing, and whether it is fire hazard or whether it is engineering hazards, it prevents engineering works in ways that it prevents those hazards as well. So as I mentioned, so evaluation of feasibility and safety on new product ideas as well. Now, if you're going to launch a new product, there the safety measures come into the picture as well. And their engineering, again, with its laws, with its ways and rules that it has to be in a certain way, it helps to make our lives much more safer. And it helps to maintain the cost effectiveness, because right from the time when, if you remember, when the first smart TVs were launched to the time right now, if you talk about, there has been a huge change in the way the pricing has fluctuated from them being very expensive, can be afforded by very few people, to today where it can be afforded by most of the people, even in our country and across the world. So that is how engineering has worked on it to bring down the cost of different products. TV is just an example, and I just gave that because it is most common one as well. You can take the example of phones as well, as the prices have come down with the same features right from the time what you call the brick, the Nokia brick that you used to use, to the time where we have these smartphones with all those features which we wouldn't have thought about. So moving on from there. Now, having talked about what engineering services do and what engineering services have done for human beings and us as people, let's just look at the different kind of services which are most popular. I would say this is not an exhaustive list. It is just the kind of services which are quite popular and might be interested in, people might be interested in. So this is the list that we have made over here. So first and foremost, yes, this oldest one, the civil engineering services. Now, civil engineering services could have different set to it. So whether it is related to construction or whether it is just related to designing or whether it is related to drafting or modeling, it would encompass all those different things into it. Then we have the structural engineering, which has to do with more with the structural stability, feasibility. Then again, drafting, detailing as well would come into it. Then we have the architectural services. probably one of the most popular ones with regards to the appeal of it. Then we have mechanical engineering services, again, one of the most important services. And again, it would involve the modeling, drafting, detailing. Apart from that, the element analysis of different products or different items that we use for manufacturing or for the designing purposes. And then the electrical engineering services as well. So we're going to start off with civil engineering services. Now, the different civil engineering services that it encompasses and the different services that we in India provide to or are sought after services in India would be the following. So CAD conversion may be one of the most basic services for engineering students or engineers, those who are working. But this is one of the most sought after services that we in India provide as an outsourcing destination. Construction drawing solutions, MEP design drafting, geospatial solution, drainage design solution, construction scheduling, tracking services. Now, these MEP, geospatial, drainage, construction, or civil information modeling services. Now, these services are being provided in India at the moment by various companies across the board. However, these are not provided in a way that later on in the session we will talk about, and I'll explain to you how and what I mean by this, like why we are not looking at this. But at the moment, the most popular ones, if I have to say, would be the first two. Then we'll come to 3D, 4D, 5D modeling. BIM to a certain extent, yes, we have started using it. We have started providing it as a service. Estimation service is another one that we provide within the Indian market. Yes, we do provide that. However, when we look at the world market, this is not one of those services which is quite there, but I do believe personally it has a lot of potential. Now, virtual construction services, this is again, it has to do more with consulting, and we will have to look into it at the later stage. Now, the different technologies or the different softwares that you use for these different services would be the following, and I'm pretty sure that most of you would be aware of most of these softwares. Maybe you have worked on many of these as well. Apart from that, these software, these services, the industries which are the target for them would be the architectural companies and the construction companies, because they are the ones, those who come out and outsource these services to us, and we provide these services to them. These are the major companies, but there could be other applications as well. Now, the structural engineering services would be whether it's the industrial structure design services, design analysis of structures, retrofitting and rehabilitation of structures, peer review services, engineering transcription using MathCAD, structural shop drawing services, structural fabrication drawings, custom home design and analysis, structural designing, planning and drafting, structural steel detailing services, and structural finite element analysis and modeling services. Now, out of all these services, in my experience, what I've seen, what most of the companies are comfortable with outsourcing are the design, the planning and drafting, mostly drafting, steel detailing services. But when I say steel detailing services, you don't get to actually work on the steel detailing, but what you're doing mostly is the drafting bit of it. Now, certain companies with capabilities, provided you have that, they also provide design and analysis of structures as well, and finite element analysis modeling as well. But these are very limited companies, and why it is so, we will talk about that later on in the session. So the different softwares, again, the used with structural engineering services are like StatPro, SAFE, Reaser, Naviswork, Revit. I'm pretty sure that StatPro and Revit and Pro Steel Detailer, most of you would be aware of and might have worked on that as well. And the industries, again, would be architectural companies, construction companies, mechanical structure companies as well, and civil engineering structure companies. So civil engineering structure companies would be the companies which are involved in the industrial level of infrastructure projects, like whether it is like recently opened Atal Tunnel in Himachal Pradesh, that sort of project, highway projects. Those are the civil engineering structural companies, those who would be interested into this. Now, architectural services are, when we talk about, they again go from drafting, detailing, modeling, virtual reality, 3D tours, 360-degree panorama, virtual merchandising, virtual staging, landscape design, cabinet drawing, retail space, millwork, construction drawings. Now, out of all these services, most of the time that you would see the companies are providing the services would be the usual drawing, drafting, or 3D modeling, or architectural animations using whether it is SketchUp or whether it is using 3ds Max, or virtual tours and walkthroughs, panorama, or 3D modeling using SketchUp. Now, the images that you see on the right hand side of the screen, the top one is the virtual staging. Now, what virtual staging means is you have created an particular environment and then you stage it. So staging it with the different furniture and different artifacts that you would place into it. And that the main aim of this is basically to showcase to the prospect or the client, this is what the final product or the final house or the office would look like. Now, this service is also used in landscape design and drafting services as well. So designing and drafting is another thing, but landscape modeling also requires this sort of service. Now, the image that you see at the bottom, now this is one thing that I want to talk briefly about here, because that is virtual merchandising service. Now, what virtual merchandising service means, now this is something that we don't get to see in India at all. But I believe this is going to be the future, because this sort of service is already being used in countries like Japan. I mean, like, of all the places, it has to be Japan, because they are the most technologically advanced people on earth. They are the first one to implement technologies. Now, what it does is, I'm pretty sure that many of us have been through the metro in our respective cities. So right from the point where you buy the ticket to the point of the platform where you get to get your train to the destination, in between, in Japan stations, they use virtual merchandising. So they have digital walls, and they use this kind of virtual merchandising to show you how it will be in the shop. And while you are traveling between the ticket center to the platforms, you can buy your groceries online, and by the time you get home, it is delivered. So what it does is basically, I mean, like, it's just one of the implementations that has been done, and it not only saves time, it is much more efficient as well, given the fact that, you know, when you're traveling between the station and the ticket center, you're hardly doing anything. But by this, you're utilizing your time as well, and it's saving time as well, especially for cities like whether it is Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore or Hyderabad, big cities where we don't have that time. This sort of technology can be really helpful. Now, talking about virtual staging itself, this is again, we do this bit in India a lot. We do provide virtual staging, then we provide the physical staging as well. But I believe with COVID in place, virtual staging can be a big thing for your prospects, because maybe physical travel is not possible. So this is one of the ways that you can see how you would want it to be staged. Now, I would like to give you one example of Taiwan. Now, in Taiwan and Hong Kong and Macau, and whether it is Korea or Japan, they have quite some frequent travel between these countries. So they have free travel sort of an arrangement. Now, when people travel to different countries, now they want to get a house for themselves to live in. But if you're in a different country, how do you do that? I mean, like, you can go on a website, you can see a couple of pictures, and you can go ahead and book that house. But what would it mean if you could actually see that without being there physically? So what they do in in Taiwan, is they use this, these VR glasses that you get these days. So virtual reality glasses. So they give you the virtual reality glasses, and they will have videos, or in real time videos of the place where what you're trying to see, the flat or the apartment. And they club it with virtual staging, and they show you this is what the furnished home would look like for you. So you can actually see the house in virtual reality. Now, that is something that I think could be big in India as well, because we have a lot of, these are small countries, and they're not as big as India's, but they do it within the countries. But think about it, if we are traveling from north to south or from west to east of India, we are a huge country as well. And instead of just landing in Hyderabad or in Bangalore and then going and finding out a house, if we could provide this sort of a service, this would revolutionize the retail, the housing sector for our industries as well. So this is one of the things that I think is going to be one of the big futures for the engineering services within the architectural services domain. Now, again, the different softwares that I use would be, again, similar to the softwares used for civil engineering services. And the industries obviously would be architectural firms, furniture firms, landscaping, retail firms. Now, the furniture firms I mentioned is because the millwork drawings or cabinet drawings, they are mostly used by the furniture firms or retail companies as well, because they want to showcase their product. They want to they draw out drafts, which is then sent out to the physical location, which is used by the people, and then they stage it exactly like how it has been done in the drawing. So different products which are going online as well are used by furniture firms and retail firms as well. Now, next would be mechanical engineering services. Now, for mechanical engineering services, again, the CAD conversions, migrations, drafting, modeling, reverse engineering, plastic injection and blow modeling, mechanical design analysis services, plant design management services would be couple of services that we provide. However, out of this list, the CAD conversion, 2D drafting, 3D modeling are the major ones, and HVAC design and drafting would be another major one. However, HVAC design and drafting is majoritively provided in Indian market. However, this is provided by certain companies to offshore market as well. But there are a few limitations to that, which we will cover later on. And one of the big things that could be the next thing into mechanical engineering services and outsourcing services would be finite element analysis and the finite element analysis and plastic injection and blow molding. So these are the two services which I believe needs to be looked into and looked at very seriously if you are getting into this sort of service, because these will be the next big things. Because nowadays CAD conversion, 2D drafting and 3D modeling is very much available everywhere, and we are not the only country in the world which is going to provide these services. So now next we're going to look at the different softwares that are being used within the mechanical engineering services. So whether it is SolidWorks, CATIA, or computer-aided engineering or aided manufacturing, AutoCAD Mechanical, HVAC Pro, Mathematica. Again, the implementation of mechanical engineering services is huge, whether it is automotive industry, energy, aviation, aerospace, oil and gas, shipping, telecommunication, marine. These are a few industries which I've mentioned, but these are the major industries where mechanical engineering services are required. Coming to electrical engineering services, these are the few that we provide. But what I've seen what the different companies are providing in India at the moment would be the 2D drafting, circuit design, schematic drawings to an extent is what we provide. However, there are a few companies which provide the rest of the services as well, but they're not that major. And the reason, again, we'll talk about it later. The different softwares used would be Calculator Raj, PathSim, and L5 Circuit Simulator, Spice, or Logisim. And the industries would be, again, architectural firms, because they would need it for the buildings that they're designing, whether it is the elevator firms, electrical engineering firms, energy firms majorly nowadays, and retail firms again. Now, so let's just talk about for a moment what is outsourcing in itself, because I've been mentioning outsourcing, and the thing is, whilst we are talking about outsourcing and engineering services, we need to understand what outsourcing is first of all, and how does engineering services fits into it. So outsourcing as a business is, anyone hiring a third party to do a part of their business or part of their job, whether it is in the same location or whether it is in an offshore location, and that would traditionally be done by them in their own. Now, why would anyone or any company do this? Why would you outsource anything? Now, there are a couple of other reasons why anyone would do it, but we'll look into it into the next slide. So now outsourcing started somewhere in 80s and 90s. Now, we in India might not think that it started in 80s and 90s because we were not the beneficiaries of it back in 80s and 90s. And the major reason for us not being the beneficiaries of it was our economic policies. So post 90, when our country opened up, we transformed from being a socialist sort of a economy towards the capitalistic economy. It is at that particular point where outsourcing was also picking up, but we were not seeing it in India at that particular moment. And the reason for that is because we didn't have that sort of infrastructure or the knowledge base or skill set that would provide basis for any company to come out to India and outsource. Now, the first outsourcing wave that we saw in India was back in 2000, and around 2000, after 96, 97, where by the time we had the infrastructure, we had the skill set, we had trained people for that, and we had our homegrown companies as well. So whether it is Wipro or Infosys, these companies have provided the space and the opportunity for companies offshore to outsource their work. Now, why would any company outsource that? Is mainly for two reasons. Basically, first is they want to focus on their process itself, and second, they want to save money and time. Now, the second wave of outsourcing that we saw in India was in around the depression or the recession that we all would remember in 2008. After that, we saw a lot of services being outsourced to India. And till 2008, most of the service industry related work was being outsourced to India. But after 2008, post 2008, there was a drastic shift into the way not only just service industry related, but also other services, and engineering services being one of those which started getting the outsourcing benefits to India. Now, why outsource? Now, the reason for outsourcing is, as I mentioned, the primary objective is to focus on their process itself. And the secondary objective for any business would be the price or the prices or the cost involved. Now, if we talk about the focus, I would like for you to look at it from this point of view that if I'm growing as a business, now, if I want to expand my business, then I would need to open more outlets or hire more people. Now, both of those would require for me to spend, so that would increase my cost and that would increase the pricing of my end product as well. So now what I do is basically I decide, okay, fine, as an engineering firm, I'm only gonna focus on the designing. So what does that do? I am only going to hire people, those who are good at designing, good at consulting, and I'm going to ask them to form a team, and I'm only going to focus on that. So suppose if I'm in Bangalore and I'm outsourcing anything to, say, anyone in Hyderabad, then I'm only going to focus on designing and consulting in Bangalore, and then I'm giving it to a third company, which is not my company. Say Keylink is going to outsource it, and it's going to outsource to a third company, which is promising you a couple of things. So if we look at this slide over here, this third company promises you, first of all, yes, the focus, because you can, this is something that is in your hand. You will be able to focus at your end. It's providing you with the buffer for the operational risks. Now, what would be operational risks? The operational risks would involve the resource hiring. Suppose if there is no work, then taking care of those resources or anything that would happen at the site, then these are operational risks which I don't have to bother about because it's not happening in my company or at my location. It is happening with a third company and at the third location. Now, when that happens, we have this agreement already signed between the two companies. So this company takes the operational risk at its end, and I get the final product without this. Now, if I were to do the same thing at my place, then I would have to take up that as well. Now, what does it mean, shared risk? Now, shared risk comes with the product itself or the end product that we're going to deliver. Now, if there is a product that is being done by me, by my engineers or by my designers, and if there is any fault in it and we passed it and the third company did the rest of the job, so we share that burden as well, because the end product is going to someone else, and that person or the company or the entity who is going to use this as a service will find out that there is a fault with the product, and at that point that is the shared risk, because we both have worked on it and we both will be at risk if there are any repercussions for that. Now, these are the few business side things. Now, what gives the eye-catching things for outsourcing would be the faster and quality service. Now, how do you ensure that? Now, I have designers. I have the designs ready. Now, I want the drafting or the modeling or any other thing done, the analysis done on it. So the engineers or the people, those who are working at the third company, will give me a faster service, because now one of the major things is that offshore thing is like when you are a client sitting in US or in Europe or in Australia, you are either ahead of us in time or you are behind us in time. So whilst we are not working 24/7, the work is getting done 24/7. So during my day, I do the designing bit and I send it to you at the end of the day. And when it is my end of the day, it's your day starting, or vice versa. And at that point, you're going to work at it. So by doing that, you are increasing your productivity 24/7. Now, if we were to do it in one location, that is not possible, because you can't expect people to work 24/7 round the clock. So by doing this, this is one of the major eye-catching things why companies want to outsource their services, is because it's faster and it's quality service. At the same location, the job that you would have done in 2 days, now here you would do it in just 1 day. Now, resources. Now, at times what happens that you have a certain kind of resources available in a particular country in abundance, like in India. We all are aware of how we have quality engineers being produced by a premier institutes around India, and we have the skill set required. Now, so the company needs that, and because they are not going to do the drafting bit, they're only going to focus on designing. So what do you do with the drafters? So drafters are going to be hired in India location, and they are the ones, those who will provide the resources. And the more number of resources you have, the better it is for the business. Now, flexibility, again, it will be coming with the same thing. If you have temporary requirements, then you would hire more people on ad hoc basis or contractual basis, and flexibility in terms of time as well would come. Now, prices. Now, price is something that is, it's not a negative connotation. We should never look at it from that point of view, because I understand most of the people would say that outsourcing is done to India because the labor is cheap in India. I beg to differ. It's not just that it's the labor is cheap in India. We are not cheap, but it's just that the living standards of a European country or an American or a Canadian or an Australian is different from our own living standards. And the reason for that is because the other resources that we have, whether it is for food or clothing or for rental purposes or for equipment prices, they are a lot more cheaper in India than they are in any other countries. So if these costs are going to be higher, then your cost will go up as well. If these costs are lower, then your cost will go down. And when these costs will go down, your final product's cost will also be affected, and that will also go down. So instead of looking at pricing or overhead costs as a negative connotation, I would suggest that we should look at it from a positive aspect, and which is basically depending upon where you are at. So if you are in maybe Dubai, then the cost of living is quite high. It's higher than in most of the European cities. So that doesn't mean that UAE as a country is as a country is providing more wages to its employees than America does. Maybe they provide the same wages, but the cost of living is what plays into the difference. Now, we have discussed why outsource, why engineering services, or any services for that matter, gets outsourced to any location from the home country. Moving on. So now engineering as an outsourcing, why engineering services are getting outsourced. Again, it's the pricing options available to the companies. Pricing, and by the pricing here, I mean, for example, if you are going to do a drafting service, even for a freelancer in US, the pricing somewhere might range from $25 per hour to $40 per hour, depending upon your experience and what you're charging, to a company providing it for $18 as well. Now, comparing it, again, all those overhead costs and pricing coming into the picture, in India, even when we outsource it, we can provide it for a lot cheaper. Because of our overhead costs being less, we can provide it for $10 to $12. Now, there are countries like Vietnam, there are countries like Philippines, which provide it for a lot more cheaper. There, if you go to Philippines or Vietnam, they provide it for $4 as well. Now, you would ask, if India is having competition from these other countries, we are providing it for 10, and then they are providing it for $8 or $4. So why would anyone come to India? Now, because of this long serving sort of a history or tradition of having this companies outsource their work to India, information security has been the pinnacle of everything. And that is one of the most important things for any company, for anyone who is doing business. Information is the key. If you have the information, you are the king. And if you lose the information, you might just ruin your organization or the company. So that's why I understand many of you are just graduates or going to graduate. So once you get into a company, the companies put a lot of emphasis on how you deal with the information. Now, the information is not just information about the client or the project or the details that we are working on. Information is right from the basic information to the big informations, just like any company has sent you their design. Now, if that design is to be leaked to a rival company, now it's a big loss for not only the parent company, but for the company which is being outsourced to as well. Because if you're not going to be able to keep the information safe, nobody wants to outsource their data to you. So that is one reason why, because India has a strong tradition of that and strong presence in that. So we provide that. Now, modern infrastructure. Now, look around to Hyderabad or Bangalore or Pune or Mumbai or Delhi for that matter. We have modern infrastructure provided for safe and secure working environment, not only to the employees, but that also makes the company which is outsourcing the work tell them that the work will be done at a faster pace and the work will be done at a better quality. And the infrastructure is not just the buildings or the furniture that is being provided, it is also the equipments that we use, that we provide our engineers with to work on. Now, compliance with industry standards. Now, compliance with industry standards, if we provide that, then what happens that you might have heard of organizations like ISO or TUV. These are few of the organizations which provide the certification for these standards. Now, why they provide these certificates is because it's like, for example, in India we have this. Sorry, once again. In India we have this ISI mark. Now, everyone trusts this ISI mark. Why do we trust this ISI mark? Not because it's a government organization which gives you the assurance of quality, but also because it has proven itself over the period of time that if anything that has ISI mark, it is bound to be of good quality, and it guarantees that. Now, TUV or ISO do the same thing, but they do it on an international level, and they do it for a variety of different services. So whether it is, right from a product to a process is also ISO or TUV certified. Now, what that means is that when you outline a process, and if TUV certifies that process, that means that at regular intervals, you are having auditing done, you are getting your process checked and rechecked again to make sure that there is no leak of whether it is the information or whether it is the infrastructure provided or whether it is the HR related issues which are to be dealt with. So what that does, it gives a brand value to the company which is getting the work outsourced as well, and the morality and the ethical value to say that we make sure that our employees, whether direct or indirect employees, are taken care of. So that's another aspect of it, but mostly it is going to be the compliance, and the compliance would be the engineering standards and the process standards that are being set. Now, customer support. Customer support is one of the services which was first outsourced to India. So when I was talking about the early 2000s, at that point, BPOs were booming like mushrooms around Bangalore and in Gurgaon as well, and then came Hyderabad and Pune. So BPOs were the first one which started this outsourcing craze in India, and we have to thank them too a bit. But now, if you look at it in 2020, BPO is not the most outsourced thing to India anymore. there are other things like engineering services would be part of it, one part of it that is getting outsourced to India, apart from the processes, apart from the product ideas that are getting outsourced. Now, what happens is that because India was the place to outsource, but now with Philippines and Vietnam, and Philippines specifically because Filipinos also speak English, and they speak good English. So um, many BPO companies now want to outsource their BPO services to Philippines because they provide it at a better pricing than India. But then again, all those other key features come into. So it is still in India we get a lot of business from BPO, but a part of it, chunk of it goes to Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries as well. Now, team experience is what I'm talking about, basically why still we get all these processes outsourced to India. So language is one. The team is experienced in India because when you have a team which has worked on outsourcing projects for years on years, you understand what the prospect wants, what the standards they follow, and what kind of things would satisfy them as well. Now, if you go to a new place, all these things need to be reworked. And change, though it is the only constant, but change is not very easy to bring into any organizational work ethics. So what they do is they try to stick with what they know, and if it is good, then there are very rare chances that you would want to move away from it. Now, high quality, as I mentioned, is again would be one of those things why a company would outsource, and option to scale up. Now, option to scale up is again to do with the flexibility that we talked about. So if we have all of a sudden a surge in work and we need to hire 10 more people, so any outsourcing destination will have to provide this option as well, because if the work goes up immediately and then you're not able to scale up your organization, then the company will not lose anything. They will go to any other organization, they will still get their work done, but you as a business would lose that business opportunity because you were not able to scale up in time. So that's why you would see many companies hire people and they put them on bench, because you might not have a project immediately, but down the line you will have. So you need to have that buffer already sorted in order to be able to showcase to people or the project or the prospect that you have these many people work, that those who can immediately start work, and then over the period of time you will take the numbers up as well if required. Now, moving on, the next slide. I'm sorry, just give me a second. Okay. Now, let's talk about the engineering services process, and this would pretty much remain the same for all the services that we provide, whether it is civil engineering, mechanical engineering, or whether it is you talk about electrical engineering or structural engineering or architectural services. And within those services, any subsets that you might have, this process pretty much remains the same. And this is not just limited to the golden engineering services, but it is also can be expanded to whether it is a project related to computer science or any other project that you might have. So the first and foremost job is to determine the scope of work. Now, let me give you a little bit of background because I'm from the sales, so I'm going to explain it a bit into deeper. So what happens in the hindsight of this first step, determination of scope of work, your marketing and sales department works in together, and they try and get the leads from the digital marketing aspect of it through your websites, through your LinkedIn campaigns, or through your physical events. Now, in 2020, we haven't had any physical events happening. However, those physical events which used to happen where you network with different organizations, the CEOs and C-level employees of other organizations, and you showcase your capabilities, you have a talk. These things are done to generate the interest in an organization, or you attend a tech event, and there you have this visibility of your organization and what you do, and that would ensure that people show interest in it, and then they come to you and they check you out on the website and other things that you do with your case studies and the examples that you might have on your website, and then they will show interest. Now, once they have shown the interest, now as a salesperson or as a marketing executive, you would be Okay, just hold on. Let me come back to this. But let me tell you this, why this is important for people, those who are listening to engineering services. Because if you're, as and when you would go into engineering services, this you need to understand, this you need to do irrespective whether you are a core technical person or not. Because as you progress down your line in your career path, at one point or the other, once you are at a managerial position, whether you are at operations manager, whether you are at a project manager, or you decided to join the sales and marketing side of the business as well, you would need this in order to help you out. So you would need to understand that this all goes behind in order to get that one lead that comes into you, or one prospect that who contacts you. Now, once that prospect contacts you, so whether if when your first job is to understand what do they need, and whether or not your organization can provide that or not provide that. Now, once you have understood what the scope of work is, and you understand maybe part of it we can provide, part of it we cannot provide. So as a person who is involved in the sales cycle, your next step would be at that particular point is to understand if you are not able to provide certain kind of services at the moment because you don't provide it. Now, is there a possibility that you can provide it by scaling up or by hiring new resources? If the project is really good, then you would take it forward from that point. So determination of scope of work would be that. Now, understanding the inputs. Now, sometimes what happens, you are provided a briefing about a requirement, and that briefing would be the inputs that are being provided. Now, the inputs can be just a brief, or particular set of drawings, or example drawings, or outputs provided to you that this is what I need at the end of the day. Now, you need to understand what you have been provided and whether that fits the scope of work. And if that fits the scope of work, then the next step again would be to understand whether as an organization or as a capability perspective, whether you can provide that or not. Then the next step, once you have established, fine, we understand the scope of work, we understand the outputs required from this, and we are going to affirm that yes, we can definitely provide this. Then the next step would be to understand what is the effort required. Now, if you're going to be an operations manager, if you're going to be a project manager, you need to understand if I give you a particular drawing, like a couple of drawings that you've seen passed in the slides. If I give you a particular drawing and I tell you that I need a 3D modeling done with a walkthrough or a 360-degree panorama of it, all inclusive, I want you to do it. So you understand that yes, your team is capable. You can do it, and you will tell me, all right, I understand that I can provide it in maybe 3 days or 4 days time. Now, you talk in hours, first of all. So you would tell me, okay, it's a altogether drafting, modeling, and providing the 360 panorama and walkthrough would require around 60 hours of work. Now, that's up to you. That 60 hour of work, you're getting it done by one person, or you are getting it done by 2 or 3 people. So that's where the effort would come in and the price would come in. So usually you would not have that. If you are in the sales process, you would get this sort of information from your operations manager or the project manager. Now, if you are the project manager or the operations manager, then you need to understand that you are not only just going to do this from the engineering point of view. Okay, if I put 2 people, it can be done in say 3 or 4 days, and the quality will be blah blah blah. But what you need to understand is that you have to understand it from the business perspective as well. So what you have to do is basically provide the best option so that the client is happy with the turnaround time. So if it is 60 hours of work and you turn around and say, okay, 10 hours every day, I'll take 6 days for this, the client is not going to just wait with you. The client is looking at other options as well. And somebody else comes and says, okay, fine, it is 60 hours of work, but I'll do it in 2 days or 3 days time and I'll give it to you. So for me, as I mentioned earlier on, price is important, but for me, the time is also important. So I would rather go with the company which provides it 3 days rather than the company for the 6 days. So as an operations manager or as a project manager, you would need to understand that this would play into it. And this could mean whether you lose a business or gain a business. So you would need to provide this sort of information and estimate it accordingly. Now, the next would be project allocation. Now, at this point, when project allocation comes, this means that you have already won the project. The sales cycle would end there. and the deal has been signed, the project gets allocated to the concerned project manager or the operations manager. They deliver it to their respective teams, and they give them a briefing about what needs to be done and by when it needs to be done. Once that has been done, in between, the customer support is carrying on. Now, customer support is not just that you will have a customer support executive supporting you with this. In engineering services, that is not how it works. In engineering services, it has to be from the salesperson or from the operations person. So in this case, if I'm the one who has signed the deal with the prospect, I am the one who has to not only do my sales job, but also provide this customer support to the prospect as well. And if you are the operations manager who is working on this, then you are the person who the prospect will reach out to, who he or she will ask questions to, and you're the one who is going to provide them that assurance, okay, the work is being done. Or if you have any questions or queries, you will go back to them, get clarifications, and if they have any questions or queries, you will clarify it and provide that A1 customer service. Because even if your work is good, you provide the best quality pictures or drafting or detailing or modeling, but if your customer service is not up to the mark, the customer will not come back. Because yes, pricing is important, time is important. However, what is also more important is how you develop a personal relationship with that prospect. And that is important not only for that one project. Once you establish that personal rapport with the client, that ensures that the client is going to come back to you next. And then you would be able to provide them with different solutions. You would be able to upscale it, upsell it, or cross-sell as well. So that's why customer support, just don't look at it from the point of view that, like how we call Vodafone or Geo, like, hello, this is Vodafone or Geo. No, it's not that kind. It's about building the personal rapport with the prospect. Now, the next one is the draft sharing. So the work has commenced. The team will start producing the initial drafts. You will share those drafts with the prospect. The prospect will give you their feedback. Once the feedback is given, you will go back to the table and you will make those changes, and you'll make the final changes and reshare the draft with the prospect. And then the final finished product is delivered. Now, this process would remain same irrespective of the services that you work for. And the different aspects that I've covered into this is for you to understand like how important it is to provide these and to go through and walk through all these different steps and understand it, so that we, at the end of the day, when the final delivery is done, the prospect is happy, and we as a business have not made a loss, but we have made a profit, and we have also made sure that our product is, as per the industry standards that we claim to provide to the prospect. Now, moving on. What is going to happen after COVID? Now, that's a big question. So if I were to show you a couple of headlines here, the third wave of IT outsourcing expected post-COVID-19 to benefit India. Now, I'll come to that particular headline later on. Then I'm going to show you a couple of others. Now, Goldman Sachs, everyone is aware of, is again saying the same thing, increasing the number of technology roles global finding their way to India as work from anywhere becomes the new accepted norm. So the key words here in Goldman Sachs reports that we need to understand is that the last line which says work from anywhere becomes the new accepted norm. Couple of others. So companies expected to outsource more. Entity is one of the biggest names for service providers in IT related industries. Then we also have a research by Opinium and Livera suggests that 28% of businesses are looking to outsource as COVID-19 survival strategy. Now that is only because when you are in your own place and there are things that you're doing and you're not able to provide these services because of the constraint of being able to come to office, or because of the technological constraints that you might have. So what it means is that post-COVID, what's going to happen? Now the third wave that we were talking about. So the first two waves I've already explained to you, that back in 2000s, the first wave happened back in 2008. 2000s, it was mostly to do with the service industry. After 2008, it was to do with the other core processes also. Like in IT industry, if you talk about, the processes started getting outsourced. So you started writing codes here. You started making all those efforts in order to, you moved up the ladder. What I mean to say is basically that. Now, the third one that we're going to experience after the 2020 ends and this COVID situation comes under control will be the third wave. And now what that means is basically now we have as a country, as a service provider, we need to look at outsourcing from a fresher perspective. Now, why do I say that? Fresher perspective because 2000, when the service industry was being outsourced, we upgraded ourselves to 2008, where we were able to write codes, we were able to, provide a support system to them. And later, from 2008 to 2020, now we have to move on to a different aspect. We have to look at it from a different point of view because the same things are not going to happen. So what it means for post-COVID changes would be, first of all, pre-entry wellness checks. Now, when you go back to your offices or colleges, these are the few things that will become the normal. You'll have to wear a mask, you'll have to maintain social distancing, you'll have to keep sanitizing your hands, or there will be machines put out there which will help you do that. Now, in many countries, they are already doing this and they're looking at it. Now, these are just the options which are being talked about. There is no certainty to it. However, it depends on the success of any of these ideas that would become the norm in the world as well. So the QR code, if we talk about, so companies like WeChat or companies like WeChat in China have already used QR code as one of the means to give entry or deny entry to anyone to any workplace. And it has already been implemented in 200 cities across China, which is being tested. So over the period of time, we'll understand that how far it is successful. Now, the immunity passport or health pass, they are pretty much the same thing. Immunity passport is being tested out in UK by two companies. One is a UK-based company that is called Onfido, and a Germany-based company which is called ID Now. So these are two companies which are testing the immunity password. So basically, they will give you a sort of a physical card that will entail that you are healthy and you don't have the COVID-19 or any other diseases as such, and you're fit to work. Similarly, health pass is a similar thing. It is done by a company called Clear in New York, and it has a similar idea that will be implemented. So now the surveys is the basic idea. So many countries are doing just the plain survey. You walk into an office, they'll do the basic checks, the temperature, and they'll sanitize things, and then they'll give you a survey. They'll ask you a few questions, whether you have, you're feeling sick or whether you're having fever, and then depending upon that, they will deny you entry or provide you entry. Also, there's a company in South Africa, Kenai, that is also working towards it for the biometric side of the business. So the biometrics are being tested out in South Africa by a company called Kenai. With regards to the other things, the Amazon is also testing out with AWS the services that it provides. AWS is testing out self-serving kiosks. It is being tested out at airports at the moment, and if it becomes the norm, then probably in near future, not very far, maybe next 2-3 months time, at our airports also we will see kiosks which we'll have to go enter our details, and it will test a few things and it will give you the immunity pass. So that right now what we have to do is we have to like, for example, today itself I just got the news that passengers traveling from Delhi to Mumbai will need to have a COVID negative report, otherwise they will not be allowed. So these sort of things where people have to do go all through the hassles, this will also change with the technology. Now, post-COVID changes, one of the major changes would be the drop in real estate footprints. Now, what does that mean? Is basically with many companies deciding to cut down on their workforce at physically present at office and giving them work from home, that would mean you require smaller offices. You require a smaller office. So right now, companies have huge offices, and at times they have more than 2 or 3 offices in the same location. So that would change. That would mean a company would be renting out less number of real estate properties in the near future, because as you must be aware, Tata has already said that they will be reducing by 2025, I guess, if I'm not wrong, 75% of their workforce will be working from home, and 25% will only go to offices. So when you don't need 75% of your work offices, why would you need the offices? You would need smaller offices, and probably centralized location offices, which will help you run the process as it is. The other thing would be, I'm like, this is not a change, this one, but this would be probably one of the concerns or one of the things that the companies would have to deal with in the coming future, as and when the COVID comes into control and then we go back to the normal business. Privacy would become one of the issues. I mean, because now we are working from home, so at times we have to work at times, outside the work hours as well. Now, the thing is that we don't mind doing it, but then that is one of the aspects which, the social behavior aspect comes into the picture. And in near future, we will see reports around that as well, with scientists researching on it. Security is an issue because, as I mentioned, security is one of the key things which the companies outsourcing the work will look at it. Now, why? Because when people go to offices, they work on the company networks and the data is safe and secure. Now, when you are all of a sudden, we had to go back to, one day we are told that we are not going to go to office and we're going to work from home. And it's been almost like 9 months that we are still at home and working from home. So these things, the security and managing these services would be the next big change that we would see as well, how we can ensure that the data that is being provided to us by a prospect can be, used and safely transacted with. And that is the learning curve that we will be talking about. Now, we will also see a lot of mechanical changes happening around us because autonomous cleaning schedules will be there or solutions will be provided so that once the people are out of office or out of any public place, cleaning will be done in an autonomous way and it will be taken care in a much more effective and mechanical way. So that is one thing that I see a positive aspect of COVID-19 as well. Now, cost and potential disruption. Disruption has already happened. Disruption has happened since March. Disruption started when once we were told that we have to work from home and then we had to readapt ourselves. Now we have to readapt with technology. We have to readapt with the way we structure our life about work and personal as well. Cost for the organization will change. Now we have to see whether it is going to increase or decrease, because as I mentioned, there will be a drop in real estate prices. So real estate prices come down. It's not only just going to be the rent that comes down. It also the the electricity, the cleaning, the maintenance. These costs will also come down. So this is something that we'll have to see how it goes, whether it's going up or whether it's going down. Less food wastage and flexibility. Now in canteens or in food courts and all, a lot of food used to get wasted. Now people will be at home. Majority of us will be at home. We'll be eating at home, so there'll be less wastage. And it will be flexible as well. We don't have to have a fixed time that this is your lunch hour or this is your break time or anything. When you're working from home, you would obviously you can eat it, manage around it according to, whenever it means. It gives you time. So now what it means, what post-COVID changes would mean. So as I was talking about, the post-COVID changes, there could be job losses as well, because obviously there was a person who was maintaining your building. There were people, those who were working to take care of your electrical needs, or there will be people, those who are providing your furniture. So there will be job losses, but then governments will have to find a different avenue to get these people assimilated and back into the work. Now, inconsistent workflow. That is one of the changes that you have seen, but this change is not going to be constant post-COVID. This change has happened because of the disruption that we talked about earlier on. And that change is because all of a sudden when everyone had to go back to their homes and work from home, and for a long time there was a lockdown, there was no work being carried out. So that led to this inconsistent workflow. However, as and when life comes back to normal, this inconsistent workflow will change as well. Lack of organizations willing to outsource. Now, this is something because depending upon where you are, there's a lockdown, there's not a lockdown, and you are not getting your work done on time. So the companies might refrain and try to get work done from the people that they have in their home state or on the home country itself. Because right now you're not sure whether there's going to be a lockdown tomorrow or there's not going to be a lockdown, and whether you are able to do the work or you're not able to do the work, and if there is any infrastructure issues coming up or if there is any security issues coming up. So until unless as an organization companies are able to address these issues, there might be a slight delay in the way work used to get outsourced first. Now, resource versus workload. Now, this is something that you might have to face at the home country where the work was being outsourced from. Because as I mentioned, if the companies are not going to outsource, they are going to get it done in their own company and by the people, those who are there. So now the companies which were focusing only on their core processes, right? So whether it was the designing or consulting services they were focusing, now they'll have to do the drafting as well. And it'll be something that you can't even say no to, because it's just such time, and that is your job description as well. So now there will be a time we might have to face this, where we have a lot of work and we don't have the number of required people to do that particular job. So what all this would lead to is to innovate the business. And that's the thing that I was talking about, that, the lack of willingness of organizations to outsource, the inconsistent workflow, the job loss, or the resources or versus workload. All this, as an organization, as companies, we will need to think how and when and what changes we can bring to convince the other organizations that no, we are still as good as we were, we will still provide you the same quality, we will still protect your data, and we will still come out on top and provide you the A1 service that you have always gotten from us. And last one, that the change that we are talking about is lack of or more of PPT. Now, this is something that I will talk in the next particular slide. So let's just move on to that. Now, we'll just remember that PPT and what does that mean, and we'll come back to that. The future. So the future for engineering services is not to call it outsourcing services, because already it was happening. Now is the right time to say India will emerge as the engineering service provider country. So up till now, India was first known as the BP outsourcing company. So, you might have seen many Hollywood movies, many series were done where, in a funny way, they have made fun that, okay, every time a person calls you, they are from India, selling you a credit card or stuff like that. That was the early 2000s. That's the kind of outsourcing that we were talking about. Then came the next wave, and it clearly shows into the movies or the series that you see around. Now, whether it is, the Big Bang Theory, in that the Indian is not a call center agent. In that, the Indian is a scientist. So we are exporting brains. This is the kind of image that is building up, because when we as a company outsource, we also look at it like, what kind of work am I outsourcing? Am I outsourcing call center job, or am I outsourcing engineering services job, or jobs which are going to require more and different sort of skill set? So this is how the perception changes take place as well. Now, after 2020, we need to look at the market from the point of view of being the engineering service provider country, not just the outsourcing country. So outsourcing is a very broad term, but when we say engineering service provider, we narrow it down to a very, very specific kind. So as I mentioned, we are going to have to transition. The companies will need to transition from their outsourcing model to service provider model. Now, that does not mean that one day you wake up and then say that, okay, from today on, I'm going to call my business not outsourcing, service provider. No, that's not how it works. If you're going to call yourself a service provider, then you'll have to do things which a service provider does. Now, what you'll have to do is basically collaborate with organizations around the world. And with that would mean that you're talking at the equal footing. When you're talking at the equal footing, what that means is that you are getting into the core process of the things. Maybe not exactly the core process, but you would get involved in the consulting of it. So whether it's an infrastructure project, whether it's an infrastructure project, or whether it's a normal architectural project or a construction project, you will get involved at the time when the project is conceived. So when the project is conceived, when the designing is taking place, when different ideas are being worked out, at that point you will collaborate and consult with those organizations, and that's how you will become a service provider and not just an outsourcing company. Because all those services that we talked about initially in the slides, where I talked about like the drafting, the most popular ones, when we are just doing that, we are just outsourcing, because the designing, the consulting, the collaborating has already been done in the another country and in another company. They have only outsourced key, all right, this is the thing, I need the model, I need the drafting, or I need the detailing, and we just do it and give it back to them. We don't do anything of sort of where we are providing, okay, this is where I think that the design might need a change, or where we analyze it, or where we provide our inputs. No, it was just, a straightforward job that we did. So that was outsourcing. So what I'm saying is that now we have to get involved into companies from that perspective. Now, cooperators, again, is just part of that. And this would require you to innovate. Now, when it would require you to innovate, it would require you to narrow down on the services that you could provide. Now, initially, you could provide a lot of different services. You can still continue to provide all those different services, but companies will need to look at it. All right, fine. I'm going to look at, for example, I'm talking about the civil engineering or structural engineering services. So it will just talk about that, all right, we are just going to provide the finite element analysis of the aspect of the structural engineering, or we are going to provide the steel detailing along with it. Now, when we do that, so we are specializing now. And when we specialize, we gain experience, we become good at it, and then we can expand to different services as well. But this is how you transform yourself from an outsourcing model to a service provider model. New technologies, again, there are new technologies which are coming up in every field, whether it is mechanical, electrical, or construction engineering, or civil engineering, or architectural engineering. We have to update our technologies. And updating technology is not about that these technologies are not available in India. These technologies are also available in India, but we're not using it to provide these from the service provider point of view. These are being used by Indian companies in the Indian context, but as an Indian company which provides these engineering services to a company offshore, we don't use that. We still use the CAD drafting, detailing sort of services, and that's where we come into the picture, and that's what we'll need to do next. Now, some of the hot technologies that we are talking about is generative design or consulting and collaboration. And now these are technologies I've mentioned, but then it would only involve like where we need to work with them. Energy efficient structures and automobiles, and 3D printing and solar energy. Now, these are the few aspects or few, where I can say, different areas that we can look at and that we should look at. And the reason being that is because, like for example, generative design is it's an iterative design concept wherein you would have a program running, and you would use certain inputs, and it would provide you certain outputs. Now, because it is iterative, it will give you a couple of different number of outputs, and based upon what your desired output is, you would narrow it down to that particular process. Now, what that helps you with is basically that it will help you to provide and save time, save process, save a lot of energy and resource as well. So if I were to give you an example of it, just 1 second, I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see it? Okay, I guess you are able to. So this particular design, this particular building is one of the latest buildings that was constructed in London, in England. And this is the Great Court. It is part of a British museum. So this particular structure that you see, this was done using the generative design. So what it means is basically what it has helped people with is basically reduce the time, use the technology, provide all those different aspects that we would have to go to different people at a time. Now, this can be done by just going to one particular software or one particular application, and that would be it. So it's a one-stop solution that we are providing. So generative design would be one of those, and Generative design could provide you outputs such as images, sound, 3D models, or animations. Now, it is a wide range of applications to it, and whether it is mechanical, civil, or anything, it can be used into that. Now, the another big thing that will come up is consulting and collaboration. Now, consulting and collaboration is something that again, we'll have to speak with different organizations. You'll have to have business deals signed up so that you provide certain sort of collaboration. And it would just not be that what they will provide you. It will also have to be what you can provide. So what you will have to provide is basically your skill set, your understanding, your knowledge is what you want to share at an affordable price, and that is what is going to get you the deal. Now, coming to energy efficient structures. Now, structures or automobiles for that matter. Structures would involve a lot of different things, like, for example, whether it is green buildings or whether it is, how should I put it? Mostly green buildings. That is what is going to make it energy efficient. And when it comes to automobiles, we are already looking at Tesla trying to launch electric vehicle in India. It is already running different vehicles, biofuel vehicles in different parts of the world. So these things will basically will be the new venues or new avenues that you have to explore, and you will have to as students, you will need to look into these particular industries, understand the kind of technology that they work on, and what you can do at your end in order to fit into this industry and get your foot in the door, as we say. So now, for energy efficient structures, I mean, like, people are using a lot of different things. People are using renewable energy. People are using waste management as a technology. People are using sustainable building materials that will be used to construct the building, and that could involve, I mean, like, one of the biggest and the most shocking material might be that is used in sustainable building technology is your denim, the day-to-day jeans that we wear. Is that is one material that is being used, or whether it is coconut, or whether it is clay. That is all being used in order to make sure that the building is green, the building is energy efficient. Now, what that means is building is green or building is energy efficient is that it would be a smart building. It would be able to reduce your energy consumption, whether it is in terms of light or whether it is in terms of your heating or your cooling. Now, 3D printing is another big technology that is being talked about, and that is the next big thing, mostly from the mechanical engineering services point of view. And when we talk about 3D printing, this is one of the services that would need to be panned out, because at the moment we do have 3D printing services in India, but we are again not providing it as an engineering service provider to offshore companies. And one of the reasons might be that we are not able to convince them that we can provide it, we can do it. Now, the thing is basically to work on it, provide these services, create your own samples, take them out, show it to the companies, show it to their prospects, put it out there on the websites, and that will change as well. Now, what would happen for students, I would like to tell that this is something that you might be interested in, and you might want to look at the 123D 3D printing software that is being launched by Autodesk. That is something that you might want to look at because that is, first of all, available for free. Second of all, it is for beginners. And what it would give you, it would give you an understanding. You can go there, you can work on it, you can get experience, you can get knowledge. And it doesn't have to be, somebody is guiding you. You can use your own ingenuity in order to work on it. And that would provide you with a lot of understanding of these different technologies. And then again, as I mentioned, the generative design, or whether it is the energy efficient buildings, these are the next big things that we need to look at. These are the things where we can consult and we can collaborate and we can provide our services. And we can go from outsourcing company to an engineering service provider company. Now, solar energy is another one, with India being at the forefront of it, and our Prime Minister Narendra Modi making it but obvious around the world, and and from having the biggest solar parks in India. I mean, like the first and the second biggest solar parks in India. One is in Tamil Nadu, and I think the other one is in Gujarat or Rajasthan. And then there is another one in Karnataka as well. So this is the avenue where you will see the next big things, the next big changes coming up. And this is the right time to get into the consulting and collaborating business, because if we don't do it right now, then we'll keep on doing the outsourcing business. And in the outsourcing business, there are countries such as Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Philippines. These are our major competitors around the world. If we talk about India, faces a tough competition from these countries, because if it is 3D services, Thailand does it good. Thailand does it at a lot more cheaper prices as well than we do it in India. If it is estimation services, if it is drafting and detailing services, then Vietnam is one of the countries which is coming up. And I'm not saying this from just data. This is something that I've seen whilst I have worked for Flat Roll Solutions at the engineering services, because that's what you, and Vietnam was the one for the preferred destination for engineering services. And what they do is that something that we don't do here in India is they try and learn the codes. I mean, like, they don't literally learn the codes, but they are aware of the codes and the way, and that would come with the number of jobs you have done as well. So they are aware of the codes, which are basically from Australia and Europe, in order for you to be able to work on these drawings or detailing services as well. So this is something that we would need to promote, and we would need to look into it as well, and then how we can bring it up, because codes are easy to read. It's only that you will have to work on it so that you're able to produce the kind of drawings what they need as per the quality standards. And I understand that it's a big ask, but it is something that you'll have to do if you want to make this transition to engineering service providers. Now, some of the big names that we will talk about in terms of the companies around the world which are using the technologies that we just talked about, the new big technologies, would be, they're all in US. First of all, they're in, like, whether it is Johnson Controls or Solar Tube or Sage Glass or Integrated Environmental Solution. Now, I would want to talk briefly about Integrated Environmental Solutions, because this is one of the ones which have made some key changes, and this is the one which is pioneering the alternative energy sources as part of engineering services. So now what Integrated Environmental Solutions has done, that they have come up with their own software, which is called IES, Virtual Environmental. Now, what that does is basically the main aim of this technology is to be able to make the building green and efficient. Now, how they make it green and efficient is the picture that you're seeing on your screen, the Walgreens. This is one of the shopping malls in Chicago. Now, this is one of the first energy efficient structures which came up, and the main highlight of this structure is that it has sensors in its windows and doors, which will let you know when the temperature outside is good enough, and then you can open the doors and windows for the light and for the air to come in when it is not too hot or when it is not too cold. So what it does is that it minimizes your energy footprint, it minimizes your carbon footprint, and it makes your building much more efficient. So this is one of the technologies which is known as Integrated Environmental Solutions Virtual Environment. That is one of the technologies that is being implemented and that is being used around the world. Now, what I would like to say is that as students or as people those who have just finished their graduation, what you would need to do is look into these technologies. You already are working on the other technologies, whether it is Maya or whether it is 3ds Max or whether it is for drafting or whether it is for steel detailing. You have learned it in your courses, and you will be learning whilst you're at work as well. And if you haven't, then you need to make sure that you go out and you learn at least one or two technologies apart from what you already know from the ones that I've mentioned already, so that you will have that competitive edge when you go out in the market looking or hunting for a job. Because if you have this, green building in India is a big thing as well now. There are many companies which are already working on it. The construction companies are also looking at it, and that would be another big thing where you might be interested in. So making yourself ready, making your skill set ready to be able to go there and hunt for a job. That is what you need to do. And these are a couple of technologies that I've just mentioned or covered here, but there are plenty. If we go out there, it's a big sea, and these are just small fishes that I've just mentioned, but significant fishes that you would need to go out and look for. So with this, I'll conclude the session, and we can move on to the questions and answers if we have any.
Thank you, sir. So, dear participants, if you have any inquiries, please post it in the chat box or in the questions tab. Or if you want to interact directly with the speaker, you can raise your hand. We'll give access to the mic. And the participants in the YouTube, you may post your questions in the comment section. So let's wait for a couple of minutes. So,
Sure, now.
so there is one question, that is, what is your advice for freshers? And so,
Well, in terms of internship, I would recommend that first of all, you need to understand what sort of job profile or what sort of work you are interested in. You need to be very clear about that, because internship would be sort of your first job or on job training that you would receive in your career. So you need to understand whether you want to do an internship for designing firm, or you want to do an internship for drafting or modeling. I mean, like, make that aspect of your career very clear. Whether you want to work in the field and go out in the construction site itself. So if you make that clear, then the next step would be to shortlist a couple of companies which you think are your dream companies, probably, or the companies that you would want to work for in future. You can go back to their website, look for what sort of job profiles they look for, develop your CV accordingly, provide them that sort of an information which will let them understand you as a person, as a future employee, with a kind of skill sets that is required or that they desire. So if you make that profile that way, you can apply for that. And whether it is a paid internship or whether it is not a paid internship, I would recommend that if you're getting an internship, you should do it, because first of all, you will get an on-hand job, on-job training, which in today's world is very important, specifically if you're going to go into the engineering services. And that would give you a whole area of different, because right now what you have understood or what you have learned is very theoretical in universities. Now, this is the time what you would need to implement it practically. So that would give you an understanding of like how much you are aware of what you need to learn and what is the gap from the market and in your skill set, and that will help you bridge the gap. So as I mentioned, first of all, go to your dream companies or the companies that you want to apply for internship, and see what kind of job profiles or the job structures the skill sets required for them. Prepare yourself for that, and then apply for the internship. And whether it is paid or unpaid, you need to go and take it so that you have that opportunity at your hand. Manasa?
yes, sir, there are a few more questions. Can you suggest few techniques and technologies for teaching effectively, especially during pandemic where everything is online?
Research scholar. Well, I understand as a teacher or as a scholar, it is a bit difficult to teach online. But I'll give you an example. I myself am attending a language class these days, and I'm learning French. And my class is like morning 7:30 to 9:30. So what I have seen is that yes, it becomes mundane. It becomes a bit boring to say to have an online class. Uh, but for technology or people those who are going to learn technology, they are of age. Those who are mature, so that aspect of to deal with them and have that kind of nuisance in the class is not there. But what we can do is that make the session more interactive. Now, making the session interactive could be either through, interactive games. Now, by games, I don't mean that you have to go out and start looking for games. What you can do is basically just interactive questions or giving everyone a chance to speak. And I understand that if it's a bigger class, maybe have a survey done or a quiz done. So I'll give you an example. Like recently on Diwali, my company had organized an event, online event, and where we had a game. Now there are online gaming companies and application companies available which will help you with these kind of questions that you would want to ask. So what you have to do is basically you give them, all your students, a pin number, and they need to go on that website, log in with that pin, and you ask the question on a webinar like this, and then they need to enter it on their mobile. Everyone has a mobile, everyone has access to it. So that way you make the session much more lively, much more interactive. So you will do the normal teaching as you do as you do. However, with these kind of incursion of these kind of activities, it keeps the interest alive as well. Also, it will help you to be able to assess. And now what you can do is, like, you don't want to assess everyone individually in that aspect, that at least you would get an understanding of how many people are paying attention to it, because that would show you as a poll, like how many people answered it correctly, how many people did not get it. So it would give you an understanding as well in terms of what is the real feel of the class and where the class is going. And I think this is needed the most, because having 1 hour or two, it's difficult to sit on if you're going to have a couple of sessions in a day in front of a laptop and just not just talk or listen someone talk. So yes, I think you need to make it more interactive and make it more people centered, and then that should do the trick. So we have another question. What is the benefit for design for manufacturing engineers? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. So if you can please elaborate on that a bit more, that would be nice. Or maybe someone from the hosting side, if you have understood the question, then if you can explain. So, Manisa?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can we get Mr. Azra Mate to get a bit more, or do you understand what is he trying to ask?
Yeah, yes. Mr. Ezra Mate, please, could you please repost your question? We didn't understand that.
Sunita, thank you very much, Ms. Sunita. That was a good question. I think if I've understood Mr. Ezra's question right, I think you're asking the if you are into manufacturing or mechanical engineer side of this thing, and you're asking what is the benefit of designing. If that is the question, please, you can type it down as yes, and then we'll try and take that one as well. Mm-hmm.
So participants have posted the feedback form link in the chat box. So please fill it. And even if you have any more questions, you can fill in the additional comment section. So we'll post it to the speakers. If you have any more questions, you can post.
Well, just one last thing. I would say if you have any questions or queries that you might not remember right now, or maybe you would want to ask later on. So the details are on your screen, and you can send your questions or queries onto that, and we'll try and take that on as much as possible.
So I think everything is clear, sir. We haven't received any queries in YouTube as well. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the session.
Well, thank you very much for having me.